and all those forever fussing servants. Being the king is not an easy job. In the 2.5 years Charles III has been monarch, royal watchers say he's been impressive. The British monarchy has weathered scandals, wars, abdications, and betrayals. But few events have shattered the royal family's carefully guarded image like this. Prince William has accomplished the inconceivable. The Prince of Wales has reportedly withdrawn the royal title of Prince from Harry and Meghan's son Archie, in a decision that has astonished palace aides, horrified the press, and sent shockwaves over the Atlantic and social media quietly without fanfare. However, this was done purposely. What might have prompted such a bold and momentous decision? It was not a documentary. It was not a memoir. This was not even a leaked interview. It was something much more intimate, much more visceral. It was an act of cruelty directed against Prince George. According to various palace insiders, a worrying occurrence occurred during a recent secret royal gathering, which was intended to create solidarity among the younger generation of royals. Instead, it became the setting for a truly disturbing argument. Archie, now older and more conscious of his public persona, was accused of insulting, teasing, and even shoving his cousin George, the future King of England. At first, the family attempted to manage things discreetly, but what was said and done was too devastating to ignore. Staff described George as visibly upset and shaken, and he apparently told Kate that he felt humiliated. So when did Prince William find out? He did not hesitate. This was more than just a playground spat. This was an attack on the image, dignity, and mental health of a child born to reign. It touched a nerve that William had suppressed since his boyhood. Beneath the shadow of constant public scrutiny and agonizing private moments, he understood what it meant to grow up regal. He also understood what it meant to be left unguarded. This stops now, he reportedly stated, behind closed doors. If he won't carry the title with honor, he won't carry it at all. Meghan Markle's answer was immediate and explosive. She saw the decision as cruel, spiteful, and very personal. However, William and increasingly the British public saw this as something totally else. It was a message for Archie, a message for Meghan and Harry, and a message for the world. The monarchy is no longer hesitant to cut its own. This is the complete story of how a prince lost his title, not through scandal, but through dishonor, and how Prince William created a line that no royal has dared cross in years. It was supposed to be a tranquil family day, a rare moment of peace behind the glittering gates of Windsor. According to sources, Kate Middleton organized the event as a show of goodwill, an opportunity, however sensitive, to bring the younger royals together, if only for an afternoon. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis were all present, as were their cousins Archie and Lilibet, who had flown in with their parents under what insiders described as King Charles's tentative olive branch. The weather was warm, the workers are discreet. Initially the mood was light, but suddenly something changed. Eyewitnesses from royal personnel, particularly nannies and security guards assigned to the youngsters, recall subtle uneasiness as soon as Archie arrived. The California-raised teenager, who was only a few years older than George, carried himself with what one aide characterized as a confident swagger, dressed in a fashionable bomber jacket and Hollywood-style trainers. The youngsters were invited to participate in a simple and traditional garden game that included a light obstacle course, beanbags, and relay races. But after George took the lead, triumphantly leading his team to a little victory, the incident allegedly occurred. Archie teased him loudly. "Nice job, little robot king," he sneered, imitating a stiff step in a large wave. "Do they also make you bow in your sleep?" At first, George, ever composed, dismissed it. However, the taunting intensified. "Everyone has to listen to you because your mum makes you wear a tie. Bet you don't even get to choose your cereal." Staff report that George appeared bewildered and then hurt, But it did not end there. During a sprint part of the game, Archie apparently shoved George from behind, forcing him to trip and fall face first on the grass. George rose up quietly, his knee scraped and his hands muddy, cleaning himself off. Kate had seen enough. Witnesses said she moved fast and positioned herself between the two guys. She drew George aside, checked his hands, and said nothing to Archie, but her gaze was enough to ice the air. It was like the air had been sucked out of the garden, one staff member explained. Charlotte stood still. Louis became quiet. Even Lilibet did not move. Kate led her children back inside as aides approached Harry and Meghan. When told what had transpired, Harry allegedly apologized and appeared embarrassed. Meghan was alleged to be dismissive. "They're boys," she allegedly stated. "They roughhouse. This is being blown out of proportion." But once told, William realized it wasn't just roughhousing. It was a premeditated public humiliation of his heir, reflecting what he already suspected, that Archie had absorbed more than simply his parents' isolation from the crown. He'd internalized their resentment. The fallout was immediate. George withdrew for the remainder of the day, refusing to rejoin the group. Charlotte held his hand during supper. Staff noticed the future monarch as quiet and sunken, unusually melancholy. It wasn't autumn, a palace insider explained. It was the manner in which he was mocked for being regal, for doing what he was raised to do. And at that time, Prince William made a decision. No more passivity, no more diplomacy. He would act not only as a father, but as the future monarch. This was not about juvenile behavior. This was about defending the crown's integrity and sending a message to anyone who threatened it, including members of the bloodline. The next morning the procedure began behind closed doors, legal consultations, drafted communications, quiet chats with King Charles. Eventually, an official notice was made to the Royal College of Arms. Prince Archie would no longer be given the title Prince. Effective immediately, the monarchy has spoken, not with controversy, not with wrath, but it uses one of its oldest weapons, title and silence. When the Windsor staff called, Prince William was at one of several meetings planning for a forthcoming international tour. But everything halted when he heard the words, "George was shoved." His aides claimed his demeanor changed instantaneously. The calm, statesmanlike stance that William had fought so hard to achieve vanished, to be replaced by something colder, sharper, a father's rage. He did not raise his voice. He did not swear. He just stood up and said, "Grab Harry, now." The two brothers had not communicated directly in months. Communications between them had been limited to legal channels and occasional tense texts, but this time William was unconcerned with diplomacy. He needed answers, and he wanted them now. The conversation between William and Harry was brief, tense, and according to insiders, brutally honest. William reportedly informed his brother, "Your son mocked me, in our home, under our roof, and you let him." Harry, humiliated and caught off guard, attempted to de-escalate the situation. He apologized. He said he was not informed of the full scope of the occurrence. Unfortunately, it was too late. William was not searching for excuses. "This isn't just about George," he added. "It's about what your family has added to mine." Enough is enough. Meghan's reaction, however, really pushed William over the brink. Behind the scenes, she had already begun labeling the affair a setup, accusing palace staff of embellishing the narrative and claiming that the Wales children were being used to embarrass her son. When William learned that Meghan had dismissed everything as boys being boys, something in him snapped. He walked into a closed-door meeting with his legal and royal advice teams and said a single remark that altered everything. If Archie can't hold the title with dignity, he shouldn't carry it at all. Strip it. The advisors were startled. No king in contemporary history has ever withdrawn a title from inside the family, let alone one conferred to a kid. But William remained adamant. He was no longer speaking like a brother. He was speaking as the successor to the kingdom, but more significantly, as a father who would not allow his son to be humiliated for doing his duty. King Charles was notified shortly thereafter. According to sources, he made no objections to the decision. He gave a hesitant nod, glanced down to the table and said, "Then, so it must be." The relocation was accomplished stealthily behind the royal walls. The public would interpret it as a reclassification of titles in light of the Sussexes' prolonged, non-working royal status. But insiders knew the truth. This was punishment. This was for protection. This was power. For William, it was also personal. For years, he had watched his family struggle to please Meghan and Harry. Every olive branch was met with betrayal. Every invitation became a headline. What about now? They were now harming George, his son, the next king. No more. This stops now, William reportedly declared as he signed off on the final title notice. The crown does not protect those who harm its future. With that, the message was sent. Obvious, violent, and historical. A line had been drawn. The repercussions were royal. If Prince William's choice sent shockwaves through the palace, it triggered a full-blown eruption in Montecito. Meghan Markle burst when she learned, via a private call from Harry. His voice strained and hesitant. What had happened? A staff member who overheard the aftermath described Meghan's reaction as swift, intense, and volcanic. "They humiliated my son," she exclaimed. "They've eliminated him like he never existed." The result was a frenzy of slammed doors, hurried phone calls to lawyers, and frantic back and forth with Meghan's closest PR staff. Within an hour, her inner circle had been activated. Plans were drafted to counter the news, alter the story, and depict the title removal as a personal vendetta rather than a disciplinary action. Meghan didn't think this was about George or any garden incident. It was about power, control, above everything, vengeance. She reportedly told Harry, "This is why I left. I spoke up because I would not bow." Behind closed doors, she planned to launch a counterattack. Rumors circulated that her team had contacted important media figures in the United States to arrange an exclusive sit-down where she would reveal her truth. Phrases such as palace racism, family sabotage, and character assassination were practiced. Meghan was determined to show the world that the firm had not only rejected her, but were also punishing her children. "They'll regret this," she allegedly warned a buddy. "This time, I won't stay quiet." But within the palace, the tone remained unchanged. The firm did not flinch. There is no statement. There is no retraction. There is no negotiation. The stillness infuriated her even more. She had expected fury. She had expected headlines supporting her. Instead, several sites portrayed the change as a formality, or worse, sided with William. Tabloids referred to it as the prince's duty to defend the heir. Royal pundits on morning talk shows stated that the palace had finally taken a firm stance. Even in California, the sentiments were divided. A viral comment posted on a celebrity gossip page read, "Meghan prefers royal titles without royal regulations. You can't have it both ways." It cut deeper than she had thought. The next day, Meghan was shot in a staged candid, walking hand-in-hand with Archie down a Montecito trail, both barefoot and framed by golden sunlight. It was intended to soften the narrative, to portray her as a devoted mother, a victim, and an outsider who yet led with love. But the internet did not buy it. "You can't PR your way out of this," one person wrote. "Your son mocked the future king. There are consequences." Behind the scenes, Harry was reported to be collapsing. Meghan reportedly accused him of failing to safeguard his children, of letting his brother win. Tensions in the Sussex household reached a breaking point, with Harry withdrawing emotionally and Meghan digging down on her media plan. Meghan never considered the title to be simply a moniker. It was validation, proof that no matter how much Elizabeth and Harry had deviated from royal duties, their children remained significant figures in history. That illusion had been destroyed, and while the silence from Kensington Palace drew on, Meghan was left with a sad reality. The monarchy lost its fear of her, and now it had acted without hesitation. Her son had lost his title, but she'd lost something much worse: control. As the storm erupted outside the palace gates, with Meghan furious in California and headlines circulating across the Atlantic, Prince William stayed silent, but not idle, inside the palace. He wasn't questioning his decision. He was not planning a public apology or attempting to manage optics. Instead, he was focusing on his mother. Those close to him understood that this was more than just one episode in the garden. This was about Diana's guiding principle. "My mother always said," William allegedly told an advisor, "when no one defends you, you will remember it forever. I will not let George carry that." Princess Diana had spent her entire attempting to protect her sons from the institution's harsher traditions. She deviated from the norm, taking William and Harry to McDonald's, amusement parks, and AIDS clinics not for entertainment, but to teach them empathy, to remind them that humanity trumps hierarchy. Now, decades later, William faced a test to see if he had genuinely learned from her. George had been mocked, bullied, humiliated, and all because he bore the quiet burden of a title he had never asked for. To William, this was more than mere playground mocking. It was a symbolic attack on the fundamental concept of duty. That is why he acted, not as a jealous brother or an angry future monarch, but as a parent honoring his mother's legacy. Kate, too, got it. For months, she had noticed George's stress level rising, the burden of appearances, the etiquette exercises, and the realization that his life would never truly be his own. However, George never complained. He showed up, he smiled. He went behind his great-grandmother's casket with poise that no child could be expected to possess. So, when Archie pulled him down and taunted him for his restraint, the reaction could not be gentle. It needed to be decisive, immediate, and loud, even when done in solitude. Insiders say William mentioned setting a tone for the future generation. That royalty is more than just genes. It is also about behavior, about understanding the consequences of your choices and the shadows they throw. "Diana didn't raise us to wear crowns," he told me. "She raised us to earn them." Many people thought the title stripping was too harsh, but for William, it was the most Diana-like act he could perform. It was intended to be protective rather than punitive. The palace was not going to wait until George buckled under the pressure or began to despise his birthright. Not again, not like Harry. This time, they would establish the barrier early and unambiguously. Several senior royals questioned the optics. Others quietly cheered it. But the message was clear. If a title is not worn gracefully, it is not worn at all. And more crucially, George realized his father had his back, not as a ruler, but as a man. A man formed by the loss of a mother who stood alone against the monarchy's machinery while never giving up on her boys. William had learned from that, and now it was his chance to draw the line Diana had never crossed. A prince had lost his title, but another had just received something even more powerful: protection, validation, and the entire weight of a father's love supported by a kingdom. As the news spread throughout the UK and beyond, a familiar frenzy ensued. Headlines splashed over the top pages. Prince Archie stripped of title by William. George protected. Monarchy draws a line. No more free passes for the Sussexes. However, unlike earlier royal conflicts, in which public opinion was frequently split down the middle, this time was different. The nation supported William. Social media was swamped with reactions, many of which were surprisingly consistent. On X, previously Twitter, The top popular tags were "Twow, protect George," "Yo, future king," "Wow, William did right." A post by a royal historian went viral within hours. When Harry and Meghan departed, they sought freedom from royal rules. They are now astonished to learn that the regulations also apply to their children. William is protecting not only his son, but the fundamental concept of monarchy. Comment sections on YouTube, Daily Mail, The Telegraph, and even Reddit all repeated similar sentiments. Archie insulted the future King of England. William did not overreact. He reacted like a father and a leader. They didn't want him to be a prince or a princess, not knowing what the gender would be, which would be different from protocol. Look, I was really ashamed to say it at the time, and ashamed to have to admit it to Harry especially. You can't have royal privilege without royal responsibility. Meghan cannot have it both ways. George stood quietly and proudly at his great-grandmother's funeral. That's who I'd like to see lead the monarchy someday. It was a rare moment of national clarity, the kind that the royals often wish for but rarely get. Even traditional Meghan defenders in the press struggled to spin the narrative. While a few American sites highlighted worries about fairness and the impact on youngsters, British commenters were almost entirely focused on one thing: the dignity of Prince George. A well-known BBC anchor expressed it bluntly. What are we doing if a child who is third in line to the throne is publicly mocked by his own cousin and no one in the family intervenes? William did what any good father or future king would do. In Middle England, the sentiment was even more intense. Call-in shows erupted with support. We cherish Diana's heritage, and George is her grandchild. He deserves to be pulled up, not torn down. You could see the agony in George's face when he was younger. That boy is already carrying the weight of the crown. William has the right to protect him, and the tabloids didn't skip a beat. One headline in The Sun reads, "Prince versus Prince," and the right one won. The most significant response, however, came not from the press, but from those who are most important to the crown, the British population, particularly young parents. Parenting forums, Facebook groups, and TikToks all supported William's decision. A viral video with more than 2 million views showed a father saying, "If another child pushed my son and made fun of him for just doing what he was raised to do, I'd do more than take a title." It had a strong emotional impact. In that moment, the British monarchy, which had previously been accused of being cold, inflexible, or distant, became human again, not because it succumbed to popular pressure, but because it demonstrated something unusual. A father prioritizes his son over PR strategy. William did not make a news release. He did not pose for a photograph. He did not attempt to score points. He merely acted, and the general public witnessed it. I get it. And for once, they agreed. The message resonated clearly throughout the land. Archie may have been born into royalty, but George was born to carry it. William did not discipline a youngster. He defended the next king. And with that, the crown's future appeared a little more secure. Not with ceremony, but with clarity. Royal titles have represented power, privilege, and rank throughout the British monarchy's centuries-long existence. But on this day, quietly and without ceremony, a title was removed, sending a message louder than any coronation horn. Prince Archie, previously regarded with regal majesty despite his parents' departure from the firm, is no longer so, not by birthright, not by custom. William's option, and it was not out of spite. It was a line drawn in defense of something more fundamental than tradition. It was a statement about respect, character, and legacy. Prince William, for all his restraint over the years, has demonstrated one thing with this decision. He is prepared to reign. He did not behave out of pettiness. He did not lash out in public. Instead, he watched his son, Prince George, the future monarch, be teased and bullied by his own cousin, rather than an opponent. Then he did something that few members of the royal family have had the courage to do. He chose principles above politics. He chose to safeguard the boy who will one day hold the crown. He opted to uphold the heritage that his mother, Princess Diana, died upholding. He opted to inform the world that royal blood is not enough. The crown isn't a costume. It's not inherited arrogance. It's an obligation, grace, and earned dignity. And when that dignity is compromised even by a member of the family, there will be consequences. Meghan might rage, Harry may withdraw, and detractors may spin. However, the crown did not bend. It didn't plead. It acted. Archie now walks without a title. He is no longer a prince. And Prince George walks forward, confident that when the world insulted him, his father stood up. In the long history of the monarchy, this may appear to be a footnote. However, it represents a watershed moment in the history of this generation. A prince fell. The king-in-waiting was defended. And a future was guaranteed, not through spectacle, but through power.